Hello and welcome to Data Planet. I'm Emma Davis, and today's guest is Anadelia Fadeev, Vice President of Global Demand Generation for HiveMQ. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
All right, so to start, I want to talk about HiveMQ, who your customers are, what problem you help them solve. But there were two terms when I was researching HiveMQ that I needed to understand a little better. So could you briefly talk about the meaning? What is MQTT and what is IoT?
Yes, absolutely. So MQTT is a lightweight messaging protocol that's built specifically for connected devices. Think of HTTP in what it is for the internet. MQTT is that for connected devices. And IoT is the physical world and how it connects to the internet. So again, we're talking about connected devices. IoT is that.
Internet of Things.
Yes.
Right. Okay. All right. Cool. So now let's get into HiveMQ. What is it that you do?
Yeah, so we bring operational data from the edge into the enterprise. So we were talking about connected devices before, and if you think about, in a manufacturing setting, that could be machines, sensors, or, other type of equipment, and all of that has a lot of data, and that data needs to go somewhere else to be analyzed, to be, acted on, and that is what we help companies do.
Excellent. And so what does a company look like who's a good fit for HiveMQ, whether that's size or function? Obviously, they have a lot of individual devices that are each potential sources of data. What else qualifies a company to be a good fit for HiveMQ?
Yeah. So, I mentioned factories, energy companies, data centers, really any company that's generating on a lot of data, where that data needs to go somewhere to be useful, right? And so, across a variety of sizes, but you can imagine that larger companies, especially in the manufacturing space, maybe it's a pharma, right? There's a lot of data that's coming from a variety of sources that needs to be centralized and analyzed, and so the more data and the more critical that data is, the more critical a solution like HiveMQ becomes to those companies.
And so do they typically have some solution in place, but it's not great, or they're recognizing, man, we could be centralizing a lot of this data, or, we're collecting this data, not doing anything with it. Is that usually where HiveMQ comes in, where they recognize, we could be doing more if only we were actually utilizing this data effectively?
Yeah, I mean, where it becomes critical is scale, right? So the more and more data starts is critical to the operations of the business, then a solution like HiveMQ is essential to help that business operate.
Okay, fantastic. So, some things that I think are important for listeners to know about Anadelia. One, you've been working in demand generation for almost 15 years. And for the last 9 years, you've been really focused on a technical audience. So, for example, audiences for whom you don't need to explain what things like MQTT or IoT stand for, like they already know. So, what is it that you like about a technical audience?
Yeah, as you said, past 9 years, I've focused on more of a technical product, really in kind of the developer infrastructure side of things. And to me as a marketer, it's a big challenge, right? Because these are big technical topics that I, normally have a lot of familiarity with, and so it's a challenge for me to learn more about that part of the world. But it's also an interesting challenge as a marketer because the way that you go about your marketing campaigns is different, right? Um, Maybe some of these technical buyers don't really respond well to traditional marketing. A lot of the learning and a lot of the validation, whether or not your product can help them solve some of the problems they're having, really happens more hands-on, right? So whether it's trials, proof of concepts, maybe it's like an open source or a free version of your product, so that they can evaluate your solution and determine whether this is the right fit. And so, yeah, it really is an interesting challenge as a marketer. I think it also like forces me to think about things differently, right? It like, in what ways can you build trust with your audience? In what ways can you show them, um, you know, not only through the copy that you have on a landing page, but the actual the actual product experience also becomes a critical part of it.
Yeah. You need to be able to prove to the technical audience, like, I can hang. I know, I know what this is. If they sniff out, like, you don't even get me. They're out. So you need to, you kind of need to figure out how to speak their language, how to understand their pain points. And I get the sense almost that the technical audience, it's like watching an episode of How It's Made or something like, ooh, I just want to get into the weeds on this very specific thing. And like, it's like you enjoy the microcosm that goes within, along with those technical audiences, is like there's a whole world contained in solving this problem, and you like to go deep on figuring that out and then figuring out, cool, what do I do now that I understand that world a little better?
Yeah. And to me, right, my role is to understand um uh our audience in understanding how where do they go to do research when they know they have a problem they're trying to solve? Who do they trust to look for solutions, right? What sort of proof is needed for them to make a decision on whether or not your solution might be the right fit for their needs, right? So it's really going into like the psychology of buyer behavior. But I'm not the subject matter expert in the topics, right? So another part of my job is, once I know, hey, like, this is where we go to find answers, to find solutions, and this is how we want the data to be presented, then I bring those subject matter experts and connect them to our buyers, right? To make sure, like, hey, like, this is how we think about approaching these sort of problems. This is how we view the world, and if our views match, then great, we might be a good fit.
Nice. I like that healthy humility. Like, I can learn enough to be dangerous and to be able to figure this out, but at a certain point, I am not the right person to be talking to about this. So, um, I like that you have that. That's part of your process, is like, identify when I'm no longer needed or no longer valuable here, and pass that on to the next person.
Yeah, I like to think of myself as a connector. I talked about HiveMQ connecting data with the physical world and all of that. Um, I am also a connector, right? I connect people that have a need with someone that has a point of view on how they can help solve that need. But yeah, in order for me to be the subject matter expert in these topics, I feel like I would have to rewire my brain completely.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. That's not what I'm here for. Um, okay, so you also have a thing for tech startups. So, looking through your history, your experience, you have been involved with tech startups in a few different capacities. Can you talk a little bit about the different relationships you've had with the tech startup world?
Yeah, I mean, as you said in the intro, like, I've spent my career working at tech startups. In the past years, in the past 9 years, really in the developer infrastructure, like highly technical space. My role has always been in demand generation, and what that means is, I work closely with the sales team to ensure that we are meeting our revenue targets. And how I do that is, what I mentioned before, is like finding where people that are having problems that our product can help them solve are going to for advice, are going to find solutions, and making sure that we're showing up there in a way that is helpful, provide something of value, and then potentially then resulting in that person becoming a customer. And inside of that, how we actually do that is a variety of things, right? We have campaigns, we have different channels, we have different ways that we measure the results of that. But the sort of foundation is the same, regardless of what company or regardless of what product. And so I've spent my career doing that, is kind of solving that problem of, like, how do we connect people that have a need today with us who have a solution that can help them.
And what is it about the startup level business that you like being involved in, as opposed to a large enterprise or even something mid market?
Yeah, and I often find myself joining companies that are on the earlier stage side of things. So, if they've built something great, They've validated that there's actual interest in the solutions that they've built, and now they need to sort of build um, the demand gen engine that brings that predictable revenue. Oftentimes companies at this stage have high aggressive growth goals, right? Like, you want to double or triple our revenue next year. How do we do that in a way that is sort of consistent and it's not just me, right? It's a combination of marketing and sales working together. But the areas that I bring in are the, like, you know basically, let's map out the rest of the year. Let's see what we expect to come in based on the types of activities that we have going on, right? Like, hey, we know we're running these campaigns, we know we're doing these events, we know on average this is how much pipeline or revenue those sort of activities are bringing in. And then, does this meet what the business needs for this time period? And if not, then where can we fill in the gaps? Can we augment this by doing some other activity, right? So a little bit of kind of numbers and planning is also involved in the demand gen side of things, but I love that part too. I feel like this is the closest that I get to be to the action without actually being in sales, right? But I can see how the results of the campaigns and the programs that I'm running are contributing to the revenue growth of the company, and so that part excites me. And why early stage, right? Like, I mean, this obviously happens at every company. Every company is doing some version of this planning and doing some version of the executing. But the reason why I really enjoy the earlier stage is that you're sort of building that, and there's a lot of unknowns, right? Like, hey, like, without fail, I can think of every company that I work for where quarter over quarter we look at our historicals and see, like, hey, how did we do this quarter? And then suddenly there's something new that we learn, right? Like, hey, it turns out that Q3 is really good for customer expansion, right? Or, it turns out that this type of event is, like, really good for us to meet, partners, and then we can tie that to this type of revenue. Um, Anyways, there's always something new that you're learning, and then you're sort of like building the plan as you go, as you bring more of those learnings, and you're like, okay, let's adapt our plan to account for these new things that we now know about our business.
Yeah.
So keeps
Yeah.
it fun.
A lot of room for creativity, for trying things. I think also a lot of moving quickly. Like when I think about the clients that we work with, typically the smaller they are, the more quickly we can go from like, I wonder if we could do this. And then they go, here it is. We did it. And it's like, oh, okay. Like there just isn't a lot of, red tape or um, tolerance for arbitrary delays. It's like,
Yeah.
we gotta go, especially in tech. If we don't get this soon, someone else is right on our tail. We need to like, it's fast. There's a lot of appetite for making an educated guess and trying something and looking at the data and seeing what works and moving on, as opposed to I have 17 different stakeholders and I need to make the case to all of them why I should make this one adjustment. And like, I mean, it's cool. That's impactful. You can move a lot further, but percentage wise, relative to the overall size of the business, you can move so much faster in a startup. And also there's more opportunity for like, you know what? Let me get my hands in there. I'll just take care of that thing myself and like, you know, keep my
Yeah.
practitioner skills sharp in addition to planning.
No, for sure. And I think it just I mean, that works with kind of like my working style and my personality is like, let's just do it. See what happens. We can learn from it. And then
Yeah.
it did either worked or it didn't, but we got a learning out of it. And that quick iteration is yeah, I feel like that just like it keeps things interesting, and it just allows you to get results faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in your years of working with various companies at various stages, but mostly early stage companies, um, I imagine you've seen how AI is starting to sort of transform the tech startup journey or experience or competition. But what are you seeing about how challenges or opportunities have changed as AI, whether it's LLMs or agentic? Like, how is that changing things for small businesses trying to get through those early stages of growth?
Well, we were just talking about fast iteration and how quickly things change, and what that's accelerated even further with AI, right? Is like I just feel like every I was just looking at an article that I read a couple of months ago about a company that was using AI for some of their inbound flows, and rereading that now, it already feels outdated. And
Yeah.
that is how fast things are changing, right? I think what this is unlocking for companies that might be working with smaller teams and fewer resources is you can do more. And I don't see it necessarily as AI is replacing, you know, roles that previously were hired for teams to do, but it's just allowing you to focus on the things that are the most impactful, right? And I mean, I'll give you an example. Like, everyone's using some sort of, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or something else, as a way to get information. You get access to that information quicker now. What's the next step after that? Is, like, as you think about, like, you start your day and you read your email and you look at your calendar and then you see what's on your to-do list. Like, it's one place where you can do all that. In fact, not only pulling that information from you, but having, systems that are like acting on your behalf in the background, that are, pushing data to you in real time as needed. All of that is giving you time back that you can use to then focus on higher level tasks. And so I see that, I see AI as unlocking productivity at an individual level, right? We spend less time on the admin part of our jobs and more time, doing the things that are more impactful. Um, but then beyond that, if and I'll give an example on events, which there's a lot of, there's a physical aspect to events that obviously will never go away, but then there's also a lot of admin aspects to events that happen right ahead of an event. You may be researching who the target audience is to determine should you even sponsor or attend this conference as a company. And then once you've made that decision, that there's some pre-event process that you're following, which includes understanding who's going to be there, who's speaking, are your competitors attending, how does that change your plan, and like what messaging you're using at the booth, what collateral you have, all of that was very manual and time intensive can now be done faster with AI, right? Like, you have an events agent that can act on your behalf on those tasks. And I think so that that's just one example, right? And we see that across a variety of roles. And so what that allows us to do is be more productive and spend our time focusing on the things that you know only a human can do, like the examples that I mentioned earlier of truly understanding who your target audience, what your buyers care about, where are they spending time, how can you have a meaningful interaction with them when you meet them where they are, or how can you get them to come to you so you can show them how you can help them with the problems they're having. So all of that, I think, just makes for better marketers, right? Because you're really truly focusing on your ICP, while all of those admin things that need to happen are being done by a system that's built to help you.
Yeah. Are you anticipating or already seeing any downsides? Like any new risks or challenges because of, competitors using AI or yeah, people trying to figure out these tools while using the tools? Are there any issues you're seeing crop up?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a couple of things. I think, as with anything that's new, and I'll give you an example. In marketing, like when ABM became a really big trend in marketing, there's quite a bit of noise, right? And so sifting through that noise to understand what is actually real and can have an impact in your business versus, what's maybe all vendor talk, or what's just theory, but no one's actually like implemented in practice. Sifting through that noise can take quite a bit of time, and it's also easy to get lost in that noise. So I see that as a challenge. I also think, the reality of LLMs, right? And like putting the important guardrails in place so that the output of what your agent's doing for you is not hallucinated, made up content is also important. And so, understanding the risks, understanding what guardrails you need to put in place. Um, uh, yeah, I see those things as challenges. I also think, just in my experience and also seeing my team and others that are getting started, is like the initial setup may take some time, but I think it's important to also understand that, you know, over time, what are you gaining from it, right? So while it may take longer to build your events agent to do all those things that I mentioned earlier, in the long run, it's saving you time because you're no longer doing those manual tasks.
Absolutely. I was just talking with someone who said they had a software update they expected to take a year, and it took like a major upgrade to their software. Someone building a software. Let me be clear, not someone updating the software on their
I was That's where my mind went, and I was like, "Wow, okay, well, time to take a sabbatical." I'll
So
be back
sorry.
in a year when my
I
computer's updated.
my iOS is just taking an eternity. I'm so sorry. Um, no, they had projected based on their experience, okay, this next major software upgrade is gonna take a year. It took 3 months, where the first 2 of those 3 months was them figuring out how they were going to use AI tools to then finish the upgrade in that last 1 month. So it isn't just, "Oh, jump in." There's, like, significant upfront research and testing and experimentation needed, but then the payoff comes pretty decisively, pretty quickly and noticeably once you have that testing under your belt. And I imagine that, that 2-month prep sort of on the 1-month return is probably going to get shorter and shorter over time. Like it takes a while to figure out how humans interact well with things. And so I think we'll just continue to see these tools get smarter and smarter at parsing what people mean and getting up to speed to be useful. So
And I think the other aspect of this too is like it's not a set it and forget it, right? You have to go back and look at the results and make adjustments. I recently was joined a webinar where someone was explaining, when to use agents versus not, and like what agents are good at versus not. And the way they framed it, I think was really helpful. Is like, hey, if you were to like hire an intern or like a part-time assistant to help you with this task, how would you, go about telling them what the job is, right? Like, how would you
yeah,
write the job description? You
yeah,
start there and then you build that. And then then they do the thing and then you look at the results and then you give them feedback so they can adjust. And then you keep doing that until it becomes the, sort of the outcome that you expect. And it's very similar. Yeah. I would say it's very similar way to approach AI and agentic.
yeah. I've used a similar analogy, but my intern is overzealous in particular because they won't necessarily like, I don't really have enough information. Can you tell? They're just like, got it, and they just go. And then you look back and you're like, whoa, you were off in the wrong direction at full tilt. And so it's like, yeah, you have to check in, but you also have to expect it's gonna just keep going anyways. It's not an intern who's gonna like, you know what? I think I'm lost. I could use some help with this. Like you're gonna need to check in on that more proactively.
Yep.
Um, yeah. All right. Well, Anadelia, this was a lovely conversation. Let's go ahead and wrap up there. Listeners, if you want to learn more about Anadelia and HiveMQ, details will be in the show notes. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me today on Data Planet.
Thank you for having me.